They stood together in fellowship, the clans of the Ratdom. Here they would make their final assault. Reggie raised his sword and issued the cry. Charge, army of the mighty Paw! Emerging through the mist at the base of Mount Cauldron, Arlo came upon the king, locked in combat. Count Kazak and his undead Sky Scorcher. Arlo rushed to his side. But again, he was too late. The Sky Scorcher was gone, flying to the summit with the king in its claws. The despair took hold. Just then, he heard his friends fighting on. He could not abandon them. He stood tall. He would be their captain now, and they would follow, even under the shadow of dark wings. Arlo found Rita battling the Darkwing Smith, but the Smith's mighty hammer soon overpowered her. Together, Arlo and Erica fought the Darkwing Smith. The fiery heat at the heart of the mountain burned hotter than any forge. Rita moved, clutching to life. Arlo ordered Erica to take her to camp. He would continue alone. His whiskers twitched and crackled. There was dark magic here. Sky Scorchers in cages. Abominations made by some spell. The screeches of dying bats echoed through the corridors. He knew these arrows. It was Robin, determined to rescue his king. Slashing and arrows flying, they fought their way toward the summit. Would the king be alive when they got there? They entered the huge throne room. They finally set eyes on the foul, laughing figure of Count Kazak, sat on his icy throne. Bertel kneeled exhausted before him. This pained the warden more than he could explain. Kazak left his beast to fight them. He had a king to kill. Arlo and Robin fought with all they had, their hope driving them on. The beast fell, but there was no time to rest. Leaving Robin to tend to Bertel, Arlo headed to the summit to find Reggie. The icy wind bit at his fur as he emerged on the peak. He saw, silhouetted in the mist, Count Kazak, and in his claws he held King Reggie, dangling over the edge. With a shriek of victory, the Count let go of the king and seemed to melt into the fatal mist. They flew into battle. The warden and the Count's weapons clashed, echoing across the mountain. Its corrupted body fell heavy on the ground. Arlo rushed to the edge, calling for the king, but the only answer in the mist was the icy wind. The war was won, but Arlo could not feel the victory. He barely noticed his friends join him. The fellowship bowed their heads in honor of their brave king. The tale of this war would be as much of loss as of winning. They returned to the Crimson Keep in near silence, each with their thoughts. There would be no victory parades. Arlo heard a commotion ahead. In the throne room were raised voices. Bertil stood in front of Reggie's throne, holding the crown, asking who should now carry this burden. Dennis barged forward to claim it. He was brother of the king. It was his by birth. Robin stepped forward and proclaimed that Arlo was rightfully king. Without him, there would be no kingdom to rule. He had proved himself on the peak. He was not alone. Leaders of the clans stepped forward and echoed their favor of the warden. Arlo objected. He had no claim here. Bertil slammed his staff into the floor to silence the rising voices. He had a secret to tell. Arlo's father was King Rattus. Bertil himself had delivered him as a child to the warden. He had a claim, if he was willing to take it. Arlo felt the truth of it, and the paw of destiny seemed to push him forward to take his place upon the throne. Bertil placed the crown upon his head. The weight of rule was his now. Dennis had been forgotten in the shouts of joy from the clans. He raised his blade and swore vengeance. It was his birthright, and he would reclaim it from this usurper. Arlo set aside the warden and became the king. A new dawn broke over the land, bright and clear. The king sensed it would not last. The promise of his half-brother would surely mean war would come again. But that, as they say, is a tale for another time. Khan was panicked. He had seen the Sky Scorchers arrive from Mount Cauldron and knew what this meant for the safety of Bogmire Forge. He asked Arlo to hunt the beasts and rid them from the rift. The stench of the toad core's rotting body had drawn Arlo to the area, but it seemed like it had also attracted a hungry Sky Scorcher. As soon as the toad core eye hit the ground, Arlo knew he was in for a fight. Arlo wondered if it was him that was now being hunted. Arriving at the nest, Arlo was surprised to see a toad core, especially as they had become a favorite meal of the Scorcher. As the toad core scoffed down one of the eggs, it became very clear why it had been lured in. With the Sky Scorcher vanquished, Arlo toyed with the idea of destroying its last surviving egg. Deciding to keep the egg, Arlo was sure it would be useful in the future. The sky scorchers that had escaped from Mount Cauldron had made their way to the outskirts. The farmers of Mossbug Farm were worried for their livestock. Arlo knew better. They should be worried for their own lives. Tracking the beast revealed to Arlo that the farmers need not worry about their livestock, as for now, the Sky Scorcher had bigger prey in its sights. Now that the beast was injured, the sheep bugs were a prized snack. Arlo knew he needed to stop the Sky Scorcher before it barbecued the whole flock. Upon tracking the beast to its nest, Arlo wondered if he had made a mistake. But he soon realized that it was this monster bird that was mistaken. The egg in that nest was no monster bird egg. The Sky Scorcher was defeated. Its singular egg gleamed in the nest. Destroying it felt like a waste for such a rare item. Arlo wondered if he could be the first rat to discover how to hatch a Scorcher egg. mole. He has been using the rod to dip his biscuits in honey, as he hated having sticky paws. The owls of Nestminster were flustered. The Darkwing's captured sky scorchers had made their way to the Golden Forest. If they were allowed to nest in the forest, then it would not be long before they rendered it to a pile of smoking ashes. The sky scorchers had been busy scouting the Golden Forest for a meal. Arlo knew he needed to stop them before they were able to nest and lay eggs. Although there was no nest, it was clear that this sky scorcher was preparing a meal for its soon-to-hatch offspring. Although Arlo was too late for this owl, he was determined to protect Nestminster. The cultists defending the Scorcher's nest were clearly looking for a new leader. Arlo would kill 2 birds with 1 stone today. With the Sky Scorcher defeated, the threat to the Golden Forest was gone. As Arlo looked down into the Scorcher's nest, the single egg glimmered in his eyes. Unable to bring himself to destroy it, Arlo kept it for himself. Who knew if it would come in handy later? Once Arlo assured him the heron wouldn't prefer to use dynamite for fishing, as was the mole's custom, he agreed to trade it. The heron cast his line around in delight, offering the best prices in the ratdom and the most delicious fish. Ernest was back in business. The beggar card. A common card with the uncommon ability to switch its qualities with another card. Looking at the board, it seemed Merlin was missing some of their cards. Arlo would have to keep an eye out for them on his travels. The mole sobbed at his empty paint pot. He was moved at the Warden of the Waste's offer to risk his life to bring him paint. Arlo was sure that's not what he said. The mole explained this blue pigment was found only in the blood of an iceworm. As Arlo approached the statue, the familiar pulse of energy began to buzz throughout his body. From his tail to his whiskers, Arlo felt stronger than he had ever done before. worms had been seen again. But these ones emerged not from mud, but from the ice, and were said to be big enough to swallow the warren whole. The rabbit bounding toward him was exhausted and panicked. Between his frantic breaths, Arlo made out the words, ice worms and village walls. Outside the village walls, the wind turned ice cold. The ground shook, and from beneath the frozen tundra burst the giant ice worm. The ice worm had escaped for now. Arlo knew he could not rest. This creature would return if he did not finish his hunt. Pursued the great ice worm to the peaks of White Whisker, and in the shadow of Mount Cauldron, it fell at last. The rabbits of the warren were safe. The keen ears of the rabbits had heard frost-footed centipedes on the march. With the warren's defenses in tatters, they turned to the warden for aid. Fish still flapping on the ground, but no sign of the fisherman. The culprit soon revealed itself. A rearing frost death march. The rabbit was hanging on by a whisker, but before Arlo could save him, a beast was on him. Was amazed at the ingenuity of moles. This one immediately put the creature's blue blood to good use, offering a hearty reward for the warden's bravery. The mole was delighted to have paint again, and set about decorating his soldiers once more. Arlo suspected it was near time he returned to his own. a druid card. A wild card in any deck. With all their missing cards returned, Merlin took down the runestone and handed it to Arlo in gratitude. Now all Merlin needed was a partner to play cards. Another runestone on its pillar. Arlo would decide later whether it was wrong to raid this tomb for its secrets. After he knew them. It slotted in perfectly. Arlo had heard tales of this tomb. Perhaps with more runestones he might get to see it for himself. With the final rune in place, the ancient door opened into darkness. A faint wind rose and fell in his whiskers. Arlo laughed at his thought that something in here was breathing. The burial chamber revealed both tales were true. A treasure hoard, and guarding it was the ancient Draugr Harat Bluefang. Fearsome warrior, now laid to rest. More importantly, Arlo had found his treasure.